Alright, so here is the first video of two very frightening Chinese fairies that you may not have heard about. The first one is Madam White. Now, depending on the lore, Madam White is either considered a demon fairy, or just an all-out fairy. It really just depends on which version of the story you're reading. But she is said to be a lethal, possessive demon in Taoist lore that appears to you as a fabulously dressed woman in white. She's extremely beautiful, so beautiful to the fact that you can't even resist her, male or female. She has typical fairy features with a dainty cherry-like mouth, a tiny waist, and petite feet. She's always accompanied by her more demure maid who is always dressed in blue. Now, if you should make her upset or if she becomes really stressed out, she will revert back to her true form, which is that of a white python, while her maid becomes a blue fish. And a story goes, there was once a young man who was on his way to central China who spotted Madam White in the distance. Now, this also happened to be during the King Ming Festival. Pardon me if I pronounce that wrong, but it was their Remembrance of the Dead festival. He was so enamored by her that he ended up paying her fare, talked to her for a little bit, and even gave her his umbrella. She invited him home with her, and there she professed her love, asking him to be her bridegroom, excuse me. That's when she gave him several pieces of silver. Now, when he got back home, someone found the silver, and that was when it was discovered that it had treasury marks, and he was immediately arrested because they believed that he had stolen the silver. That's when he told them the story of what happened. So the police took him to the Madam White's residence, but when they got there, it was a rundown shack. When they walked inside, the spirit of Madam White briefly made an appearance where she disappeared, and there was a pile of silver left there. They ended up believing the man. He was exonerated and he was able to keep all the silver, but he had to leave his hometown because people believed that he was consorting with demons. Fall had come and he was now working in a faraway place where he ran into Madam White again. There she explained the disappearance was just a misunderstanding and once again proposed, and he agreed. The two moved in together and they were happy until spring came with with the Remembrance of the Dead festival, and once again she disappeared. The young man went to his local temple, and there he ran into a priest and told him everything that was going on. That's when Madam White, her maid, showed up on a boat, and the priest yelled out, "Demon, demon!" And Madam White immediately disappeared. This is when the young man finally realized he was dealing with a supernatural spirit. The priest told him he needed to go back to his native hometown and pray. When he got there, he found Madam White waiting for him, and she was basically begging for him to come back. Scared and not sure what to do, he went to his local priest and asked for help. This is when the priest realized that Madam White was actually a demonic attachment now attached to the man. This is when the priest gave the man a bowl and told him to press it against her forehead as hard as he could. When he did this, she began to shrink and shrink and shrink until she was a tiny snake, and her maid turned into a fish, and they took the fish and put it in the river under a bridge. Now, you'd think that's the end of the story. Fast forward some years later, another young man, while on his way to the festival, came across the bridge and saw a little girl sitting by the river crying. She had told him that she lost her grandmother and needed help finding her. That's when the young man offered to take her home, and there he met this beautiful woman dressed in white, Madam White. Madam White said, if you stay with us for a little bit, you can have dinner with us. And then after that, she confessed her love and proposed to him. She had another lover waiting in the back, and realizing she didn't have much use for him anymore, they unalived the murderer and ate his insides for the feast. The young man wanted to flee but did not know what to do, so he waited until everyone was asleep, and the little girl, who had special powers, flew him out of there and flew him home. Later on, Madam White showed up at his door and told him that he owed her his heart and his liver. Unable to get away from him, he began to do his prayers and she disappeared. The next season, same thing happened again where he ran into her again, and this time he had a Taoist priest who also recognized the demonic attachment. Do the same thing. They got a bowl, pressed it against her forehead. That caused her to shrink, and they again threw her in the bottom of the lake. Unfortunately for a lot of young men, she keeps reappearing and keeps showing back up to them because they can't seem to get rid of her. So this is the case of someone who just won't seem to go away. Either way, let me know what you think about this in the comments. You can check out my book, The Night I Danced with Fairies, available on Amazon. Link in bio.